Welcome to Norma Talks this Wednesday. I am recording this on Wednesday morning as usual, around 10 o'clock in the morning. Today is a little different than usual because I received an email from a friend of mine who said, I want you to do some readings on what's happening and going on. Now, I have talked about the tarot and I have talked about how I do readings, and I thought I'd just explain a little different about my difference of readings than from a lot of other people. First of all, I was trained by a man who had devised a brand new method of reading. And that method basically dealt with self-growth, self-development, and an understanding of how the laws and lessons of life work. So in a way, you could say I am a psychological reader. Because I'm also a metaphysical minister, I can say that word. In the past, when I was not a minister, I have actually been taken to task via letters and threatened to, have a lawsuit if I use the word psychology or fourth dimensional psychology or anything else about that. But today, people who come to me for readings or my regular clientele and new clientele, they know that primarily what I do is to understand what's happening and give solution. I always say, if you have a decision to make, I'm the person to come and see, because I can look at the outcome of doing A, B, and sometimes I come up with C. So it's like a very good. Now, I started learning how to read these symbols when I was 20. I am now 76. And I have been reading them all that time, pretty well all that time. In the beginning, you might take away 10 years because I was busy with children, husband in university, working, etc. But when in 79, I moved to White Rock and I began soon after teaching the tarot at a metaphysical bookstore in Surrey, which was adjoining city. And I haven't really stopped since then. I've had gaps when I've got involved in other things. So when it comes to reading, these symbols, there's 78 of them, they talk to me. They tell me what I need to know, or what I perhaps can shed some light on, whatever. And I just have to say, this last Saturday, I was doing a day of mini readings for people. And sometimes I would look at the symbols that were down in front of me, and I knew I had to say certain things, but in my mind, I was going, really? In the back of part of my mind. And then I usually say at some point or other, do you understand what I'm saying? And to my surprise, sometimes, not always, they say yes. And that's over the years how I've come to trust that, but I still sometimes will go, oh my goodness. And also too, one of the other things that I find a lot is that I'm given metaphors. And some beautiful metaphors came through on Saturday, and one of them I have kind of put into my long-term memory a little bit, but usually the metaphors come appropriate for the person that I'm reading for. So what we're going to do is I'm going to draw some symbols around a question. I just wanted you to know what today was going to be about. It's basically what the tarot tells me about what's going on. Now, the first question, I kind of changed a little bit of the question because I'm not a yes/no person particularly. I do sometimes say, oh yeah, this is great, go for it. But I don't, when I have a question that says like a yes or a no, I kind of shy away a little bit about that, because conditions that are around things, our perspective of things, the energies that are happening doesn't always come where you can say yes or no very specifically, unless it's really a yes or really a no. So I really like to take a look at the conditions around. So that's what I'm going to do. First of all, the first question I've got here that I've rewritten a little bit is, what are the conditions around or surrounding the current chaos? That's going to be the first question. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm shuffling my cards here. You cannot see that. I'm going to put them down on the table in front of me, make 3 piles, because the questions will follow one after the other. And the first one says, actually. It's kind of, hang on a minute, I'm going to make space to put them down so I can see them. Actually, it looks not too bad. It says, what are the conditions surrounding the current chaos? And what it's doing here is basically letting the past, what we've known as the past, behind. But we're in a holding pattern. So in other words, what we knew, what we've known is behind us. And we're looking out and we're looking at not sure what, but it basically says, and I always love the way the tarot does do this, it says, but everything is possible for us to create what we want. It's going to be up to us to aspire how we want things to be. So we've got a choice, I think, here. We can choose to recognize things are changing, but do we just sit still and wait to see kind of what happens, or do we not? So in other words, what's going on? I think it's stationary. And the next question that was asked actually was, is the end coming of all this chaos that's gone on basically since February, March, in the next 3 months? And I can't honestly say that that is true at all. In fact, it looks murky to me. And why it looks murky is because each one of us is desiring and wanting certain things, but we're not looking at all that is offered or all that is happening or going on. It's like there's a lot of opportunities, but communication is incredibly important to actually have. One of the symbols here has what we call the wand of will and authority. And my eye is really drawn there. So it's what we will, because we're going to have faith and not just listen to anybody and everybody as things are moving. So we've got again, I get choice. We have choice. Communication is very, very important. The decision of what we are wanting. But is this going to be the end in 3 months? I don't sense that at all. I just see that things are going to be moving on. So that brings us to the next question is, what do we need to do to prepare for or expect before the end of the year? And I think in lots of ways we have to get our head out of the sand. We have to make some decisions about what we want. Yes, there is an acceptance of limitation that's going on here, but to me, it's like we don't have vision. I find, like, if I'm teaching goal setting and I'm teaching we want change, we need to have vision. We need to know where we're going. But if we're just sitting and saying, oh, well, it'll all work out, or, oh, yeah, this will end or that will end, but it doesn't show that. So what to expect for the next year really is for you to make a decision, accept what you can't change perhaps, but at the same point, don't just sit and kind of bury your head in the sand. It's your choice. You got to decide the direction that you want to go in here and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. This is a very uncomfortable place. If it was a person coming to me to ask about should they do this or should they not, I would ask, what are your alternatives? And look at the outcome of A or B or C or even D. So they would have some information to work on. That part I don't have here. And so it just says, don't put your head in the sand and blow things up out of proportion. Decide how you want to proceed. And there is some acceptance of things that you can't change. So there's some things that are occurring that you can't totally at all change or make any kind of difference. Now, the third question that there's actually, I think this is about the fourth, but is there anything we can focus on or do in order to navigate this next phase up until the end of the year? Now, I've kind of touched onto that with what's going on. And again, what we're seeing here is that our fear is an important element. What are we doing with our fear? Now, we already know, if we use our common sense, that the media, and I'm going to just put my own personal piece in here for a moment, that the media gets the fear going, because when they have you in fear, they whoever they are, have a certain element of control. We also know that there's a lot of censorship that goes on there. And if you, again, it does happen, because I've had people that I follow all of a sudden disappearing off things. Now, what this shows here is to watch your fear that doesn't sidetrack you from what you're wanting. You have an impact that you can create by knowing within your mind what it is you want to create. There is more stuff coming. It shows that. So you've got to be very clear about how you want that to outpicture in your life. In other words, if you're going to be like the ostrich and put your head in the sand, well, you're not going to be listening or watching or being aware of what's coming down the turnpike at all. It's kind of like, no, this is where it is. I'm quite happy accepting this, that, and the other. Now, what the questions were, because it's like we're entering in, I want to see, and I'm asking this question, what 2021 is going to bring. And the first thing it shows up here is the need for us, and that's us who live here, anywhere, is to really change our attitude to life, to really understand what life is, because there is a lot of restrictions. And how do we get out of the restrictions? How do we change the restrictions? I'm already personally affected by restrictions that are happening in another part of the world. And my plans have had to totally change because of those restrictions. But it does say the need to become like the hub of the wheel and use your knowledge, use your awareness, use your growth in the direction so that you get things moving. Because you have it, again, it talks about choice. You can feel like you're stuck and make no movement or change or awareness. Don't ask. If you don't ask any questions, you're not going to get any answers. If you don't make perhaps some form of movement can happen in the mind, can happen in your feet, it can happen in some way, shape, or form. But it basically the change of attitude, of recognizing that there, and I talk about this a lot, that there's a force in the universe that will support you getting through things, that will give you strength, that will give you clarity. The thing is, people don't always ask for that. So I'm going to just look a little further about, and sometimes I can get time pretty good, so I want to take a look at the time. I basically think that everything will pretty well say very similar to what we've had going on till around March, almost like a year. Middle of March, beginning of April, at which point we are going to have a choice. We either get really upset over what is coming down the turnpike or what's already here, or we can begin to see what we can do differently to make things be much more effective. I'll say one thing that it shows very, very clearly, that until the end of April, there's a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of change. Things are not really going to just change by the end of this year at all. I think we're looking, and as I look here, we're not going to really see, you might say, a new dawn or a new awareness or a new something come in till about the end of April. And so just as a support, I want to say this, sort of like a roundup message. Communication is incredibly important, not only for yourself, but with other people, because there is healing that needs to get done. You know, I live by myself, and I'm in an apartment building that's not that many of us. And one of the things I keep hearing is they really don't like not having any contact with people. I'm very lucky because I have clientele, even though it's through Zoom, and I do have some friends that drop by. So there is a little bit of contact, but for people that don't have much, it's difficult and it's hard. So communication is very important. The other key is to have in your mind how you want things to be. And that's without judgment. That's like, you know, somebody friend A may want the end result to be one way, friend B may want the end result to be another, but you need to decide how you want it to be, so your thought, your action can go towards that. And know that this is not going to be over quickly. Now, I have not done any reading on this at all up until now. I've actually avoided it because I was like, I don't know if I want to know. And what it shows here is just keep on keeping on. Become aware, listen, communicate with other people as much as you can. And just realize that the powers that are behind this, because it definitely is a worldwide element, that they are still involved. They're not finished yet. This is not finished. This is not completed. And I know they've already talking about a second wave and the third wave, and I don't know how they know that, but their waves are so called. But I think end of April, look to the end of April. In the meantime, do what you need to do to strengthen you, to make sure you're healthy, to keep your immune system as much as possible reinforced, to become aware. Just don't ignore things, even though you may think, well, that just sounds weird. Listen, because there are people trying to understand exactly how some of this stuff has happened and where it's coming from and where it's leading. And so, it boils down to each one of us, how we want to be and how we want to act and how we want to do. So I have to thank my friend who asked for these questions, and I tried to talk her out of it, actually, but she said, no, I really would like to know what's happening, and she trusts how I read. So I want to thank you for today. Next Wednesday, there's Sunday coming, and next Wednesday I'll be more back talking philosophy of being rather than making crazy little predictions here. And I just want you to have a great week and enjoy what you can. Get out, enjoy nature as much as you can, because we're not really allowed to get together to celebrate life. That's still very much keeping us separate. But we can go and we can look at the nature. I'm lucky I can look at well, they're not huge mountains around here, but they're high hills. And I can see nature in action and know that, yeah, we've got a winter coming that looks like it's going to be a lot of snow here where I am and in other places. But it's enjoy what you can do, and just don't feel beaten down or anything else. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for the subscribing, for the likes, for the comments. I want to thank you and let you know that if you want to make a comment to me or get on the monthly newsletter, please go to my website, normacowie.com. And just be happy. Thank you.